What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Canes Insight Daily Podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Victory Monday yet again. Where else would you rather be? The weather is perfect in Miami. I'm sure it's nice everywhere, but certainly over Coral Gables as the Canes go to 10-1. First 10-win season since 2017. They have not been coming that frequently since the Butch Davis-led teams of the early 2000s. And those rosters. So you take them when you can get them. And really excited to talk about the win, what Miami has going forward, the game against Syracuse. Recruiting is hot and heavy, the portal. No better time to be a Canes fan than right now. It is December almost, and we got everything in front of us and a lot of excitement around the program. First, I want to talk about some folks that are consistent year to year, and that is Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in.
What's up, D? Good win this weekend. I'm still reeling a bit from the basketball team. I was very frustrated these last three games here. I did those post-game shows, but at least we have the football with some success this year, huh?
Yeah, we cut a podcast off air, right? Just complaining about that game, and hopefully they get on track. Maybe steal one of these games where they're going to be a big underdog against these big SEC teams coming up, non-conference, and that could change things around a little bit. But going back to the Miami Hurricanes football program, obviously huge win over Wake Forest, covered easily, although it didn't feel like that watching the game. But when you sit back and you say, okay, the team did what they were supposed to do. The spread was exactly what it should have been from the points standpoint, from a yard standpoint. You go 4 quarters of performance, Miami did exactly what they needed to do. The defense played one of their best games of the year, completely stopped Wake Forest, held them under 200 yards total. Aside from the first drive, were pretty much lights out the entire game. So you get what you want from the defense standpoint. Team performance overall, 4 quarters. When you look at it, it's right where you need to be statistically, and then no one was hurt. So didn't always feel that way because of the slow start, but ended up being just what the doctor ordered for the Canes.
And as you see here, undefeated at home this year as well. And then other than that Virginia Tech game, which was a heart stopper, it was pretty smooth sailing for this team. Obviously, there was a bit of a scare there in the first half against Wake Forest and then against Duke as well. But you got to be very happy about how the team performed in front of the home fans.
And defense much better overall than against Duke. 7 points, 3.4 yards per carry, 12 first downs. Of course, 7 more points coming on special teams, which is a whole nother issue we'll talk about. But it's what you want to see. Now, listen, just because you dominate Wake Forest doesn't mean the defense is back. Much tougher tests coming up against Syracuse in the Dome. One of the best passing offenses in the country. Guys that can make contested catches, which you've struggled with at times. Think of the Duke game. So we'll see what Miami does. It's a lot to talk about with the Syracuse matchup, but really I wanted to just dive into what we saw against Wake and what we could take going forward as we head to what's going to be the craziest December that we can remember.
And if you guys haven't checked that out already, D-Money made a post on the CanesInsight.com website. Again, completely free to sign up. And, he has all his thoughts that he'll kind of be going through here in writing if you guys want to check that out. So go to the website to go see that. And again, remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate everyone who's in the comments already here. Get some questions in. We'll try to get to as many as we can. But D, it was a great bounce back second half there for this team. And I think obviously the defense, we'll get into that now, but a lot of different things that we saw there, different adjustments. We talked about it a couple of weeks ago and even this last week before the game. It's tough to really make a ton of different changes on the fly here this late in the season, but some tweaks that Guidry made both personnel-wise, and schematically, I think made a big difference.
Yeah, Messidor at edge, I think was very helpful. Barron, didn't go the way you want. Obviously, his playing times reduced, failed to contain against Georgia Tech, had some mental errors there, and now has a reduced role and then ultimately doesn't play much at all. So you need to get that situation sorted. Tyler Barron, very talented player, very important stretch of games for him, for his future. So you hope to see him kind of get that fire lit under him and come back. We're going to need his pass rush against a Syracuse team that loves to throw the football. But Messidor, probably more natural as an edge. That's going to be his position in the NFL, undersized at defensive tackle. So you put him on the edge. He's able to get a sack, did a very nice job setting the edge against the run. Always plays with great motor and intensity. So excited to see Messidor really at his best. And I think seeing CJ Clark perform more than adequately at defensive tackle, stopping the run, gives you more confidence to put Mesidor out there a little bit and let him go to work against some quarterbacks that can throw the football, which is probably, think about it, Miami's not going to go against a bad quarterback the rest of the way if they want to keep playing winning football and go into the playoffs.
Well, and it wasn't just Mesidor's play, but it was the fact that it opened the way for Ahmad Moten to play more inside, D. And I was texting you during the game, and he had the sack, but I was literally texting you right before he actually made the sack to say, man, he's been really impressive. And I think that size, man, it's been kind of missed there this year. And look, it's that Wake Forest interior offensive line. Shout out to Cam Lemons, who came on with us last week to preview the show, because we asked him what his concern was, and he pretty much said that he thought that Wake Forest was going to have a tough time on the interior there, the defensive line in general. But that was the story of the game. Miami controlled that line of scrimmage there, defensively. Wake Forest, obviously not a prolific offensive team, but we were a bit concerned with how they would react to the slow mesh. And there was just, in terms of that run game, even the pass game, there was nothing going there. So, yeah,
I think shout out to Cam. He nailed it. That's why you watch those shows with Pete, with the behind enemy lines, because those opposing beat writers know what they're talking about. We'll do one for Syracuse coming up, but he called it. The interior line suffered. They're not able to get anything going through that A gap. Miami was sturdy there, and that allowed the rest of the defense to flourish. You're going to see more teams testing Miami on the perimeter as the speed level goes up. Syracuse, more of a contested catch, big operation than speedy players, although they have some speed, big running back as well. But if you get to the ACC championship against SMU, which again, we know there's a big hurdle between you and that, but if you get there, they're certainly going to test your perimeter. And as you go on, this Miami's weakness. So Wake Forest didn't necessarily have the personnel or the playing style to test where Miami's weak there horizontally, but it's not a guarantee that you can stop their inside running game as well. Miami was able to do it. Some really nice performances from Ahmad Moten. I liked when we improved our speed at linebacker, playing more Popo Aguirre, who's back from an injury, playing more Cam Pruitt, Bobby Pruitt, number 22, the true freshman who had a nice tackle for loss right when he came in. He's got a lot of speed. He can strike. There are so many times horizontally, not necessarily in this game, but throughout the season, where a play that should go 2 yards goes 5 or 6 because the speed to get there, the lateral quickness to get there is not quite there. And then the tackling is not that striking tackle that you get used to when you have higher quality back seven players. So I think that's something we've missed. I think a guy like Bobby Pruitt can help in that area. Popo Aguirre as well. So glad to see those guys get some more burn.
So we have some questions coming in here. D, any last thoughts? Not last thoughts, but in terms of this game, what else really stood out to you? Again, looking at your post that you made on the website, just your overall thoughts in terms of certain guys who made some plays out there this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I really just want the offensive line to me is a big one. Going and watching this game again on replay, and if anyone wants to, it's a long week, so if anyone wants to go back and look at the highlights or just watch the game again, I know a lot of people in the chat and that listen to the show do that. That offensive line, if you just watch. You could key on anybody, particularly Ines Cooper, Francis Malinois, Matthew McCoy had a really good game as well. Those guys were moving people. I know Wake Forest is not Georgia in terms of the size of their front, but man, this is a dominant offensive line, 220 plus yards rushing, over 7 yards a carry. Cam Ward had all day to throw, completely dominant. And as you get here into late November, December, offensive line carries. It's a very consistent position group. It doesn't depend on everybody else, but everybody else depends on it. So I think offensive line, the way Mario wanted to build this is raising the floor of the team through the offensive line. You've seen that. Now when you add a dynamic playmaker like a Cam Ward, some good skill positions, good running backs, good tight ends, the ceiling is as good as there is in the country, but also the floor is higher because of the offensive line.
Yeah, and it's just that the thing about that run game, D, is it hasn't been super explosive at times this year. We did see it, there in that fourth quarter with Jordan Lyle with some big runs, but it doesn't seem to go away. There really hasn't been lulls in that run game. Look, Cam Ward hasn't been perfect the last couple weeks here, but you have a run game to lean on. And go back to a lot of these shows early in the season and before the season. This is what you were saying, really. You get to this later part of the season, and look, the passing game's not always going to be putting up 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. You need something to fall back on. And that run game has been there all season long.
Yeah, and I think not just throughout the course of the season, but really throughout the course of the game, meaning maybe the first quarter, they're getting 4 yards a carry, then 5 yards a carry in the second quarter, then 7 yards a carry in the third quarter, then 10 yards a carry in the fourth quarter when you see those big runs, oftentimes from the third back, whether it's Lyle or A.J. Allen earlier in the year, because you've gotten so much punishment from Martinez and Fletcher. We'll talk about Lyle in a second because he really looks like one of the next great backs at Miami, total package type runner. We've been talking about it since he showed up on campus, Pete. But I think the ability of the running game to not take losses, to be consistently getting yards. Very rarely do you see tackles for loss against this running game. Very rarely do you see no gainers. Usually it's 2 yards on a bad run, 6 yards on an average run, or 5 yards on an average run. The overall average yards per carry, top 10 in the nation. They're up to 5 point. I'll check, but they're in the mid fives, which puts them top 10 nationally in yards per attempt. Just a really, really good offensive line, good running game. And you see the fruits of that punishment later in the game. Plus, Miami's third down percentage is the best in the nation by far. They're at 55%. Number 2 is 50%. And I think number 3 is like 49.5. That's the gap between Miami and the rest. And Cam Ward's probably the biggest reason for that. But Washington State last year, they were only getting 40% of the third downs. That's middle of the pack nationally. So they go from that to not only number 1, but number 1 with significant distance between 1 and 2. A big part of that is this running game and the ability to consistently stay ahead of schedule and then give your playmaking quarterback who's got ice in his veins, who's a very smooth operator with the decision-making. He gets the room to work on third down without it being 3rd and 13 or 3rd and 11.
The talking about Jordan Lyle, shout out to Tony Cabrera who tweeted this out this weekend. And, he listens closely to the show, man, because he says Lyle was so good. That's the contact balance that Kane's Insight was talking about all off season. And that's the thing that's most impressive about him. Yeah.
Shout out to you, Tony. And listen, we try to give you what we're hearing, but when we say we're hearing, we're not hearing third, fourth hand. I mean, we're giving it to you as direct as possible. We mentioned, if you go back and look, when they first showed up on campus in the summer, because they both did not play in spring, but we said Jordan Lyle, O.J. Frederick. We also said Elijah Lofton as far as the guys that were here early. Bobby Pruitt as well, who you saw make a play. So people always talk about Green Tree All-Americans. You guys always are hyping up these Green Tree All-Americans. The guys who play well on Green Tree, particularly young players, are typically the good ones. That's not always the case, but most often it is the case. And those young players typically will flash early. And
it doesn't mean they're going to be dominant right away in the games, but it shows you that they've probably got what it takes if they stick with it and they continue to develop.
And so much of it is mental. When it comes to young players, and people who listen to this podcast are probably annoyed, especially when we get into recruiting and portal, because I'm going to stay on the same theme. The mental is the most important. It's a separator. Pete, you are now a veteran in this game because you've been in it since you were a teenager, and now you're in your 30s.
And I've dealt with guys who don't, who come out of the college level and either make it or don't make it at the NFL level, and that is always the separator.
Early. Some guys mature. Jacoby George, Ahmad Moten. Great examples of guys that were sort of up and down, have really matured and locked in and developed throughout their career. You see Jacoby George really emerging. Pete, you called his emergence in the second half. You said he'd have a big second half. He has been having a big second half of the season. Really great game last game. And then Ahmad Moten emerging as one of the best defensive tackles, certainly on the team, maybe even in the conference, at least on a per snap basis. He's really doing a really nice job and developing as a third-year player. Some guys are like that. But more often than not, the guys that come in early with the mental advantage, your Mauanoas, your Ruben Baines, Mark Fletcher, those guys tend to excel. And now you're seeing it with Jordan Lyle, O.J. Frederick, Elijah Lofton, guys that are really, really good mentally, and that translates on the field.
Without a doubt. I want to get to some questions coming in here. First of all, Coach Jenko said, "Boys, I had my watermelon lime sparkling water for the game we won. My bad 2 weeks ago. We're back on track."
I got to be consistent, Coach. You know that. I know you're teaching your boys on consistency. Got to be consistent with the pregame routines. It's the games are getting too important.
Raymond Rosowski said, nice work, D-Money and Pete. Defense poised for a late season run. Damari and Elijah return. So, by the way, this morning, I believe Coach Cristobal said on the Joe Rose show that Ryan Rodriguez and Damari were most likely coming back this week. We'll see. He said that in the past, as we said last week when some people thought that Damari, as he did warm up. So that was step in the right direction. And then we actually have a question from Gio that kind of follows that up. Do you expect Damari? Do you expect to see Damari worked in slowly, or are we going to see starter level snaps out of the gate? I mean, common sense would tell me they kind of work him in there slowly. But this has always been for a month plus. I've said I would love to see him in that Syracuse game a bit. Obviously, that passing attack we'll talk about throughout the week, one of the best in the country. But would like to see him get his feet wet here to get ready for a postseason run. But if he gets out there and he's looking good, then he's obviously one of your better players back there. So I think it might be a play-by-play, series-by-series basis.
Yeah, shout out to Raymond, by the way, ran into him in the game. So shout out to everybody that said hi at the game. I appreciate all you guys. With respect to Damari, first of all, injuries, you don't know. It's just hard to predict how someone's going to wake up the next day. You just don't know. Positive sign, obviously, that he was working out before the game. You saw Jalen Rivers do that before he came back. You saw Ruben Bain do it before he came back. So positive signs from Damari Brown. The tricky thing with Damari to me is you didn't know what his best position was before the season. Outside corner, probably where he's most comfortable. You might want to lean that way if you're getting him ready for games where he's already kind of most comfortable. Nickel is where he's going to play the most, at least early on, and that made a lot of sense because of his physicality and what he gave you in the running game, plus allows you to keep Mish at safety, keep Daryl Porter outside where he's very comfortable himself. But he's also, some people talked about him potentially being a safety down the road because he is so physical and so big. He'd be, to me, when I think about Damari Brown and where we've missed him the most, his physicality and his ability to strike people and knock them backwards while still playing very fast and being a true corner is pretty unique. I would say it's on the higher end of what I've seen in Miami. Just that one trait, the size and the physicality at corner. Maybe you go back to like an intro role as somebody who is so big that can knock you back as a run defender and it's just as a tackler. So obviously Roll eventually moved to safety in the pros, but he was a corner here. I don't know where Brown ends up. The hard part is for a guy that you wanted to figure out where he fits best, now he's coming back from an injury, so you can't really play him everywhere. You got to put him where he's most comfortable. You put him where he's most comfortable. Do you put him where he's most needed? Maybe he's most needed at nickel. Maybe he's most comfortable on the outside. It's a tricky balance. I don't know the answer, but these are the things I'm watching is not only when he comes back, but where is he situated when he comes back? Because he's a guy with a lot of versatility, but not a lot of experience.
Martin Dubé says, once again, let's all remember we won on Saturday and we stand at 10-1. Let's be happy, you grumpy Canes fans. We were 5-7 2 years ago. And I think, look, at the end of the day, D, yes, a lot of things to clean up. It's not been a perfect season. Things could have probably looked different record-wise, but they are on track. And this is the roster building that's been taking place with Mario and his staff. Yeah,
shout out to Martin Dubé in Botswana. We got our guy Boyo in Mallorca. So we got some guys all over the place here. International.
And Boyo's asking about Jordan Lyle as in pass pro. How would you rate him, D?
Really good.
I think that's why they trust him.
Really good. I think, look, if it wasn't for the fact that you have two older players that are playing well ahead of him, I don't think they'd have any problem playing him more because his pass pro is ahead of schedule. Sometimes you see young players not playing, particularly at the running back position because their pass protection isn't as good. Obviously with Cam Ward, that's a premium because he's your best player. You got to protect him. But I don't think Lyle hurts you there. I think Lyle could easily be doing what Damian Martinez does as far as his snap load. He's a freshman. Freshman running backs tend to make it earlier than other positions, assuming they have that pass protection part solid, which he does. So I don't think he's being held back because of inexperience. I think he just has two really good players in front of him with more experience, and they're using him more as that change of pace. Down the road, with what he's shown, with the explosiveness he's shown, I agree with those who say he's the most talented, probably NFL-type back in the program. I would agree with that. Work him in like he did this last game, where he's a change of pace. You got thunder, and then lightning. By the way, Lyle's pretty big too, and is physical in his own right, has great balance. So it's a lot of thunder in that room, but Lyle gives you some of that lightning. And I think you'll see him, particularly in the second half, when defense is already tired of tackling Martinez and Fletcher.
Port Knox says defense seriously looks better and faster with the Aguirre, Pruitt, and Chase Smith combo. Thoughts? I mean, you kind of alluded to that at the open of the show and in your post as well.
And I'm curious to see what Kiko does against a McCord.
Kiko, I thought was getting downhill a lot better in this game.
And that's where you want to see him. And Kiko's Kiko when he's making plays in the backfield, getting sacks, getting tackles for loss. That's who he is. That's what made him really good last year. It wasn't just, it's not like he was the sideline to sideline eraser. Downhill, plays in the backfield, using his instincts, using his timing, using his size. I think that's what you hopefully will see more of. You saw a little bit against Wake, but if Kiko Mauanoa is getting sacks and pressures against McCord, who's not the most mobile guy in the first place, not someone who wants to be getting out of the pocket, he can do it a little. But in terms of the guys that Miami's played, he's probably on the lower end of run threats. So get him off balance, get him uncomfortable, and have Kiko doing what Kiko does best. I'd love to see some more of that when you play against Syracuse.
Mark Ragsdale asks, can you explain the streaky nature of the defense, Cal game, Duke, and Wake after the first drive? I mean, look, we've been trying to figure that out all season long. I think a lot of it comes down to communication and pre-snap alignment, which we covered pretty much a ton last week. And that was what happened on the first drive as well. I mean, there was a communication mix up there. Obviously, OJ Frederick with the guy streaking across the middle, tried to pass it along, to one of the linebackers. And then they kind of I think it was Alderman. And, I don't know whose fault it was, right? It's very tough for us to sit here and say whose assignment it should have been. But at the end of the day, I think that's what a lot of it comes down to. And look, at the end of the day, the tackling was way better this weekend. The first half, there were some missed tackles, but I think those are the two things that you can probably pin it on. Yeah,
I think that's a fair statement. And the opponent, I mean, look, Wake is not as good as some of these other teams that you're talking about. Duke really is not very good on offense. And they were able to have some success. I think, Mark, to answer your question more specifically, as far as the streakiness, when you're not a good defense, you're going to be inconsistent, right? This is kind of similar to how Miami's been in the past, where you have talented guys who can play well, but your communication and your discipline and the things that you can't control aren't great on defense. At least they have not been to this point. And then your talent has gaps. So you might have good defensive ends, but you don't have a good secondary. And if your defensive ends don't play well, your secondary really gets exposed. So I think that's what you're seeing with Miami is some talent, some major talent gaps, and then the communication and alignment hasn't been what you want to see. But I thought the secondary played much better. You saw Mish Powell, who we're going to talk about here in a second, Pete, as you could talk about the Beacon Adjusters. But Daryl Porter, great play on the ball. I saw his dad after the game, and he was saying, he's kind of getting on him for not taking that to the house. But look, he's got chances. Still got a few games to go to get that signature pick six. But that was a great break on the ball. I think with Porter, I want to give some love to Porter here because he's taken one for the team playing so much nickel. I think he's much more comfortable on the outside. So being a senior showcase year and you're playing inside because some of the struggles to get a true nickel in there, I think it's a credit to Porter that he's made that sacrifice and given you a chance to win. And when you put him on the outside, very experienced, very good. You saw some of that against Wake.
Dan Alden says slow mesh allowed guys like Kiko to play his natural position. Q's will go back to putting linebackers in conflict. Look, they're different offenses, honestly, and we'll talk about Syracuse a ton this week, but I would argue the slow mesh puts linebackers in conflict in a big way. Obviously, they didn't have much success because the defensive line was doing such a good job, but I think the whole point of the slow mesh, as Cam Lemons talked about last week, was putting those safeties and linebackers in a spot where they had to make the decision, to kind of take a step towards the line of scrimmage or to stay in coverage.
And this is an interesting game in the run game because Wake Forest had, even though they were testing you inside, they had some speed. Didn't see it aside from that kick return because they were mostly living inside. But Syracuse is back. He is really a power back first. He's a good back. He reminds me of a Mark Fletcher, not as good. So Syracuse has an effective big back. Again, I think Fletcher has more explosiveness and more juice, but Syracuse has a guy that size and that playing style, that temperament, a guy that wants to run you over, not going to make a lot of moves, not going to run to the sidelines. So I think with Kiko, that fits his style better. I think it's going to be a battle there inside the box, mano a mano, at least in terms of the run game. So I don't see a situation where he's running around like against Cal, right, where he's chasing people around and trying to use his speed horizontally. This is a situation where, at least in the running game, he'll be downhill, battling in the box. In the passing game, we'll see how that goes. Obviously, Syracuse is a pass-first team. Would love personally to see Samauanoa getting to the quarterback, doing what he does best, and that's making explosive plays in the backfield.
Byron Ross asks, explain the lackluster run game design. I think we've touched on this a bit, D, throughout the season. I think a lot of what Miami's been doing up front is designed to kind of eliminate tackles for loss, which has been, something that they've been able to hang their hat on all season long. And they're averaging 180 plus yards a game on the ground. I think they're now looking at it here, 40th in the country. So look, can you nitpick? Yeah, you can. I can't really think of a time this year, D, where the offense needed a yard or two on the ground and weren't able to get it.
Yeah, and by the way, when you say the top 40 in the country, about rushing yards total.
Yeah.
Remember, we pass more than anybody around.
Right.
So, or pass, better than anybody around and pass quite a bit. Our run game, as far as per carry, is 10th nationally. And I'll give you a stat right here. And let's see if in the comments people can answer it. Name me a team in the SEC, Big Ten, and ACC that has a better yards per carry than Miami. 0. Miami is, if you add up the three, it's power 4, but let's call it the power 3, the real true big conferences. SEC, Big Ten, ACC. Miami has the best yards per carry of any of those teams at 5.4. The only real big program that is ahead of Miami is Notre Dame at 6.3. Their running back or their quarterback also runs the ball well. So Notre Dame, as far as like the teams really in the mix, is the only team that's running the ball more efficiently than the Miami Hurricanes right now. We know what they're doing on short yardage. We know their conversion rate in the red zone and things like that. To your point, Pete, and I think you're dead on. I was talking about with our friend Coach Corsi, longtime offensive line coach here in the high school level, also offensive coordinator.
And a great golfer.
Like our guy. This offensive line is built to not make mistakes, not only in the running game, but in the passing game. So you have smaller gaps between the linemen, tighter splits. It's more of a muck, but you're not losing a lot of yards. They're so big and powerful that even without those big gaps and the ability to generate larger gaps, they can just push you and mush you and kind of lean on you, which over the course of a game leads to explosive runs in the fourth quarter. How many times have we seen that? Of course, Fletcher, Martinez, these are 230-pound backs. Lyle, who's a change of pace back, he's another big back, 200 plus and very strong. So your running backs are huge. You have big tight ends that can block, and you have a huge offensive line. You can just kind of lean on people in low-risk running situations. Another byproduct of that is that you're always ahead of the sticks. Our third down conversion rate is the best in the country by far, 5 points ahead of number 2, like we talked about earlier. Getting ahead of the sticks with this low-risk running game helps. And what Coach Corsi mentioned is that we take a lot of time to snap the ball because the offensive line is very careful, well-coached, and deliberate about making sure that the protections are on point to what they're seeing in front of them. The communication, excuse me, and just the ability to see it, communicate it, make sure they're on track when the ball is snapped. As a result, you are not seeing a lot of free rushers this year. It's just not something that you see, especially coming up the middle. How many free rushers do you see where Cam just doesn't have a chance? A lot of times it'll be maybe, you had the play where you had an RPO and Noah thought they were running and they were passing. But for the most part, you're seeing pretty good communication up front, and blitzes are not getting home because of the communication up front, the deliberate nature of the offense. So all that's to say they're playing like this for a reason. And the result of it is the best third down offense by far, the most efficient offense per play by far, and the best scoring offense in the country. Put it all together, best offense in the country, and the offensive line, including the run schemes, pass blocking schemes, and the way we play, all makes sense when you have a quarterback in Cam Ward that can make plays and bring it home.
Our Moo asks, what are your thoughts on the running back rotation? Feels like everyone knows 21 and 4 should be the only ones getting touches. I think that, look, the juice that Lyle brings to the table is obviously different than both Martinez and Fletcher. Obviously, he has the ability to go the distance when he touches it, and his quickness is there. That burst is definitely different than those two. But I think people are really taking for granted what Martinez does in terms of wearing a defense out. And by the way, he's averaging 5.5 yards a carry, right? So I think, again, Lyle brings you that big play threat. But over the course of the game, I don't think the defense really likes to tackle Damian Martinez.
No, at all. How many times have you seen him just effortlessly run over the first guy? And I'm not talking about like knock him back and fall on top of him. I'm talking about run through the guy and keep your feet, and the guy's on the floor and you're running for 4 extra yards. He did that early in the game against Wake, kind of set the tone there. Of course, he's always falling forward, always gaining yards. Like you mentioned, Pete, 5.5 yards a carry, 739 yards, 8 touchdowns. Also, 198 yards receiving.
Kyle just said that.
Yeah. So Martinez is a really good player. He's going to get drafted. He's going to play in the NFL. I could see a career very similar like a Gus Edwards, which is really good, maybe even better. So he's a pro. So when you have a pro
and he might have some more receiving yards if Cam wanted to dump it down a few more times.
That's a fact. And his pass block has gotten better too. He's a big guy in that part of the game. So I think we have one of the best rotations in the country. And depending on what you think about Lyle, maybe we start bumping up against an Ohio State or a Penn State because of the third back, right? So I mentioned yards per carry. We are number 1 in the Big Ten, ACC, and the SEC. So that's pretty good company. And it didn't happen by accident. There's a lot of things that go into that. I think another thing that helps the running game is teams are worried about Cam Ward now. But one of the reasons they're worried about Cam Ward is because when they try to stop the run, Cam Ward threw it over the top of them early in the season. So you got to pick your poison. That's what makes this offense so special. And that, by the way, we're talking a lot about the run game, Pete. We're going to break the Syracuse matchup down as the week goes on. But if you ask Syracuse fans, the Syracuse writers, and we'll talk to one, they will tell you Syracuse's biggest weakness is stopping the run. And that's something that could take the air out of their passing offense.
Well, and look, you haven't seen many games this year where Miami would say, well, we want to slow the game down. Obviously, the pace, they're not the fastest teams in terms of plays run, but they want to score as many points as possible. I think you'll see that run game come into effect big time this week.
Yeah, you need it. I'm just going through here because I said the stat and I wanted to dig in. So yeah, Miami 5.4 yards per carry. Penn State with 2 very good NFL prospects at tailback, 5.2 yards a carry. Ohio State, same thing with 2 very good NFL prospects at tailback, 5.2 yards per carry. So that's the kind of company Miami is keeping, running the ball while also passing it better than anybody in the country.
So just looking to see if there's
let's talk about our Beacon Adjusters player of the game, Pete.
Yep.
So I wanted to focus on a guy who made the play of the game and is in a position group that's gotten a lot of scrutiny, but he's made a lot of plays that have helped us win ball games. Very smart player, was honored his senior day, 6-year guy, somebody that's brought a lot of preparation to the room. I know Coach Cristobal mentioned this guy's preparation is coach level, the way he sees the game. So my Beacon Adjusters player of the game is Mish Powell at safety. Changed the whole dynamic of the game with the pick 6. By far the most important play in the game. Wake Forest was starting to roll a little bit. The crowd was starting to murmur. Once he made that pick 6, crowd went insane. Great hands, great reaction. He, again, knows what's happening. He studies the game better than anybody. And that's his 5th interception on the year. Starting to get into a high level of playmaking in that secondary. It's one thing to bat down balls. It's another thing to make the play. And Mish Powell this year has made the play.
And I will, I agree with you. It was Powell, but I'll give myself a little pat on the back. Before the game, I picked Elijah Arroyo. I said I thought he would, have a real good game. And it seemed like there was a concerted effort to get him the football. Had that one where maybe could have caught it, was thrown a little bit behind him. Was that 3rd or 4th down? I can't remember, but
that would have been a walk-in touchdown.
Yeah, so I think it was thrown a little bit behind him, but still, if you ask Elijah, he probably would have said he should have made the catch, but offensively, I think he opens things up so much for us.
Yeah, I think watching it live, I think he went to show Cam he was open. He was kind of screaming, "Hey, I'm wide open," and then Cam threw it, very quickly and with a lot of zip, a little bit behind him where he had to adjust. But I think if he wasn't doing this, he would have been able to adjust and catch the ball. But he was calling for the ball. He was wide open. He would have walked into the end zone. But yeah, listen, Pete, we've talked about it a lot. This is a great. But first of all, we're going to talk a lot NFL draft because I'm passionate about it. I know Pete's passionate about it and experienced in it. We always kind of have a lot of our conversations offline in between takes in the studio. And yes, we were in the same studio. People always ask. But a lot of times we're talking draft. This tight end draft is as good as it gets. Probably one of the best since the year Mallory got drafted a couple of years ago. Before that, there was the year with Gronkowski and Hernandez, and a ton of guys got drafted that year. This is a really, really good tight end class, top to bottom. Guy from Penn State, Warren, number 44, unreal. Loveland from Michigan's got a lot of fans. There's other ones that are really good too. The kid from what's the Mac kid? That's number one receiver in the country, or one of the number one receivers in the country from Bowling Green. I think his name is Fan. Someone will help you out in the comments. But there's some really good tight ends this year. Elijah Arroyo. If you talk about looking the part, and we've stood next to him, Pete, exactly what you want, size-wise, physically. Route running, fluid, sharp, well-trained. Hands catcher.
And fast.
Fast. And by the way, on top of that, physical, can run after the catch and not afraid to block, and he can catch the ball through contact. Add all that, plus the character's off the charts, and everybody loves him. So add that up. To me, he's a first-round pick. I compare him. If you compare him to Njoku, I made the post. I know you know Njoku very well. Case can be made. He's a top 5, at least, tight end in the league right now. Would you say that?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, he could be top 1 if he had a better quarterback, maybe. Harold Fannin Jr., appreciate that, T-Love. That's the name I was looking for. But if I compare Arroyo to Njoku, and I'm being honest, Njoku's explosive athleticism is unique. I don't think anybody's got more just juice as far as the jumping and the short area explosiveness of Njoku. Physically, they both are, exactly how you want it to look. I don't see a huge difference in terms of size between the two. They're both tall and strong and not carrying a lot of fat. Speed, I would actually say it's a push, or maybe even a tie to Arroyo, long speed. Njoku, maybe short area, more burst. It's at least comparable speed-wise. Hands, I would give the edge to Arroyo, and routes, at least at this age, I would give a significant edge to Arroyo.
Yeah, I think, as Kyle says here, he says Arroyo will be a top 60 pick. I agree with that. He says injury history, which may bump him down a little bit. That's kind of been my thought process behind it. But I think the thing that people maybe don't realize with Njoku D is he's turned himself into one of the best blockers in the league at tight end, and he's really, really strong. People always talked about his ability to run and jump, but he's strong. And look, Arroyo is as well. He's physical, but I think that's maybe the one separating factor between them right now.
Yeah, and we'll see how he develops in it, right? Because again, I think blocking and I think at Arroyo is a little ahead.
Yeah.
Even coached different too.
Yeah.
Cristobal, that's big. You saw, just to give you an example, and this is a good film for Arroyo. I know it's Wake Forest, but this is the film that showcases a lot of what he does well. This is one of those that I think is going to look good to those who watch it in the NFL level. But he had a play, I want to say it was on a Lyle run, where he was the lead blocker and he was hammering guys. I mean, it was a straight collision. He was out there to do damage. He was put in a position where the play depended on his ability to make that block, and he did so with some pop and physicality as we finished. So shout out to Arroyo. Your Beacon Adjusters player of the game, mine, Mish Powell, both seniors. I know Arroyo technically has a year of eligibility, but he's on the way out. We want to salute him. So
well, and I said it the other day. I tweeted it out. The fact that he was part of the senior day festivities is a pretty telltale sign that he'll be declaring for the draft, which again, I don't think there's any reason he shouldn't. He's had his injury stuff, fully healthy this year. Hopefully that continues, obviously. But you got to go when the iron's hot. And of course, this segment was brought to you by Beacon Adjusters.
Yep. And listen, if your property has been affected by Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton, any other type of storm, Beacon Adjustors Group is here to help. With years of experience handling storm-related damage, we work tirelessly to ensure you get the compensation you deserve. From assessment to settlement, our team of trusted experts will guide you every step of the way. Don't face the aftermath alone. Let Beacon Adjustors Group restore your peace of mind. Call us today, 954-466-4224, 954-466-4224. My man Ricardo from Beacon Adjusters sent me a picture. He was out in West Columbia, Texas, looking for the next Cam Ward. So hopefully
it brings him back, man.
Lightning strikes twice, but yeah, shout out to Ricardo and Beacon Adjusters. Recruiting, obviously, hot and heavy. You had some guys on campus visiting. A lot of 26 kids, some big 26 tight ends, running backs. That 26 class we'll be talking about a lot. I think the 26 class is where you're really going to feel the effect of this winning season because of the way the schedule's moved up, where so many commitments and visits are before the season starts. The impact of the season is less than it would be in the past. Remember, 10 years ago, you'd be lining up visits for December. That's when people would start visiting and checking out your program, right? And then they'd sign in February. So a lot has changed with the calendar. I think in those days, a good season really gave you a lot of juice down the stretch. And a team like Florida will get a boost from playing better than they were. But I think with Miami, you'll see a top 10 class. That's what I think is a realistic goal. You wanted a top 5 class coming into your third full cycle. So that'd be a little bit of a disappointment. I think that's your feeling a little bit of what happened the years before, but it all depends on how you finish. Some big fish out there, none bigger than DJ Pickett. Guy Miami is really going to hone in on here with LSU struggling. I know he said he reaffirmed his commitment to LSU, but that's one I'd keep an eye on. Miami's going to work that one till the very end, and he just makes so much sense here on offense and defense, quite frankly. His season's done, so it's full recruiting mode for DJ Pickett. That's going to be one to watch. CanesInsight.com, 7 million posts and counting. People will be posting about recruiting at all hours of the night and the day. So join there for some great conversation, breaking news, all kinds of stuff. If you're a recruiting fanatic, sign up today. It's all free.
Canes Cat C305 has a recruiting question. He says, but D, didn't you say we canceled Kellen Wiley's visit because we wanted to focus on the rest of the season? Why do we cancel his but have others on visits?
Great question. So Kellen Wiley had an official visit lined up. Malachi Toney, who did make the game anyways, he was there anyways, but he had an official visit lined up. Micah Newton from Newberry had an official visit lined up. Those are 2 commits. Official visits are the whole experience. Your parents come down. You're at, a very nice hotel, the Ritz in Cocoa Grove a lot of times. So you're getting a top line experience. You go to steakhouses right on the water, Miami Beach, Rusty Pelican overlooking the bay. It's the full experience. It's a lot of work. And
the whole staff is involved too. It's not just the the position coach, some recruiting people and Mario and the coordinator. It's like everyone in the staff is involved.
And the players.
Right.
Yeah, player host. So Miami's really locking in on the next game, let's call it. The next game was Wake Forest, but then right when that game ended at noon, when official visit would have still gone through Sunday. And Miami immediately turned the page to Syracuse, trying to make sure they can win that game on Saturday. So I think that's why they didn't want these official visits, knowing what's at stake. I don't think they like official visits this time of year anyways. The problem is it's fine with Malachi Toney and Micah Newton, all the guys that are committed, it's fine. Those guys will visit after they sign. You'll give them the experience as Miami Hurricane signees. Wiley's tougher because he hasn't committed anywhere yet. Hopefully that recruitment stays alive because I know Miami really likes the player, and it was not like canceling the visit because they didn't want him in the class. If Kellen Wiley signs for the Miami Hurricanes next Wednesday, they'll be very happy. We'll see what happens in the weeks to come. I'll get you more information on Kellen Wiley and where he stands. But that was the latest as of this weekend as to why he didn't visit officially.
Get to a few more comments and questions. No Face says, poor Njoku, the dang Browns wasting my man's talent. It's not a complete waste, man. He's one of the highest paid tight ends in the league. So I think if you asked him, he everyone wants to win, but he got paid and will get paid again, by the way, because he's still there in the prime of his career. And again, looks like he's getting better, with time. Obviously someone who takes care of his body at a very high level and has become the ultimate pro, 1000%. Shout out to FRM, man.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. It shows you the importance of recruiting freaks. Al Golden was really good at this compared to his the people that followed him, and just identifying guys with physical talent. Al Golden made a lot of mistakes in recruiting. I thought his South Florida recruiting was really not good. He let a lot of guys that were future pros go that he could have had easily, while at the same time taking projects that were not going to play at all. So I think South Florida-wise, Al Golden really wasn't that good aside from the no-brainer kind of guys. But I thought he made some very nice evaluations, and one of them was Njoku. And Njoku was a super freaky talent from New Jersey, big body guy. His high school tapes was just catching the ball and running over guys that were not really in his league. But you could see the athleticism and the ability to make it translate. He redshirted, ended up with a rocket ship after that. Rousseau, who you mentioned, Njoku about to get paid. Rousseau, I believe, is 24, 25 years old. Might be younger than that. He might be 23. Rousseau is very young. So with his level of production, let me look up how old Greg Rousseau is. But with his level of production and his trajectory and his physical, he's 24, Greg Rousseau. So he is going to sign and probably be the highest paid defensive end in the league in history. Maybe he's the highest paid defensive player in history. I don't know. Watt, I think, signed pretty recently, and Garrett. So maybe that's going to be hard to overcome. But I think Rousseau's number is going to be shockingly high if he continues to play how he's playing. So this is the importance of bringing in freaks. That was a wide receiver, defensive end guy that they brought in. He had played wide receiver and safety his whole career, played a little bit more as his career went on, his senior year, more of a stand-up rusher. But you projected the body. He came in, took to it real fast, has continued to develop even through the pros. And now you're seeing really his peak performance. So this is a way of saying, when I look at this Miami recruiting class for this class of 25, the one thing I think it needs, you have a lot of solid players, guys that have a profile that suggests they're going to play a lot. Your Gavin Nix, the receivers both all have very solid profiles. Brock Schott, super talented guy. You could see him playing early. Gerard Pringle, really dynamic player. S.J. Alfatuli looks like a future starter for many, many years. Herbert Scroggins, another real solid player. What I think you need is freaks of nature. Hayden Lowe, you're getting in the right direction there with some size. But you need guys that are just, if they hit, they're going to hit Njoku style or Rousseau style or Jalen Phillips style. And in this class, the name that jumps out from a freaky standpoint, DJ Pickett. That's why I'm kind of focused on him. So I was thinking about, what does this class really need? And what this class needs, you really needed a Ben Hanks to come in and start right away and be a first-round corner for you. That one I think is slipping away. But you need freaks, guys that if they hit, they can be really special impact guys that they sell the jersey at the pro store. Let's see if DJ Pickett get that one to the finish line and then develop him into a player like a Rousseau or a Njoku.
T-Love42 says, can't talk about recruiting without talking about the portal. Do we make a move at QB? I mean, look, I would expect to. We did a whole show on it a couple weeks ago that got a lot of hits, so it seemed like people were very interested in it. But I would say yes.
Yeah, I think I watched Sean Mateer against Oregon State. He's got to be a high candidate if he goes in the portal. The sell is obvious to him. To me, I think Miami's sell is going to be the best of any of these teams looking for a quarterback, because you're talking about offensive line. You're talking about proven concept with Cam Ward. The running game with Lyle and Fletcher is going to be outstanding, and whoever else you have there. You bring back Horton. You get JoJo Trader and Nikar up. I'm sure you'll bring in a high-price receiver in the portal. Riley Williams lofted in the passing game. This offense is built to succeed next year. You need the right quarterback. You can get a guy that's going to manage it and do well with good players around him, but I'd love to get a guy like Mateer who's a playmaker and could really elevate the team and also elevate his own stock to where he's here to being more like where Cam Ward is, which is Heisman conversation, NFL players doing a celebration.
And D, I was texting you about it this weekend, and look, things change quickly. I would not consider Miami the favorite for Mateer at this point. That's just what I've heard at this point. Again, things change very, very quickly, but that's what I would say right now.
Yeah, I mean, the rumor going around, and it's on Twitter, I mean, it's no secret that Oklahoma and Mateer have some sort of agreement. His offensive coordinator go to Oklahoma and follow him there. If that's really the case, you got to question the logic. Oklahoma threw for 60 yards in one of their best offensive performances of the season. So I could see those discussions taking place. I think with Miami, with a Mateer, or with anybody else, you just need a chance to get him in the room.
Right. Wow. Are we getting some recruiting news here, D?
Master, our buddy Master's calling.
So the king of TikTok these days.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's a TikTok man now. Chi-Town Kane, appreciate the support, man. Thank you for the contribution. Asking about Dallas Wilson here, D.
I'll get an update. I don't believe he made it to UF, which is a huge threat to get his commitment. You have Oregon, number 1 team in the country. They're going to be in the mix. So I think with Dallas Wilson,
Master's calling me now, man. It must be important.
Yeah, maybe take it. Maybe does he have information on the transfer portal? Text him. Text him. Find out what the deal is. But I think Dallas Wilson, I put him similar category to DJ Pickett. That I think that's going to be one of these until the pen hits the paper. You saw with Jeremiah Smith last year, and Jeremiah Smith's all about his business. It's not like Jeremiah Smith's some sort of dramatic guy. Obviously, he's taking care of business here in the next level. But his recruitment was live until not even his announcement. It was live like 4 hours after his announcement. Remember all those rumors that he hadn't signed his papers yet, and they were making press conference questions about it? Mm-hmm. I think Wilson and Pickett are going to be live recruitments right till the end. With Miami, they've had him on campus. They've recruited him hard. They've liked him for a long time. I think there's a chance there.
Michael Quinones says, do LSU struggles improve Nussmeier's chance to enter the portal or draft?
It can't hurt. I mean, I've heard people say he might be trying to declare for the draft. My opinion, and it's not just my opinion, I've seen people write about this. It's just common sense. He does not have enough starts to go pro. Now, he might say that the quarterback class isn't that good, so I'll just go get drafted where I get drafted. I'm not going to have as much competition in the quarterback class, and I'll get maybe late first round money, early second. I'll go somewhere and develop. To me, I think it's very obvious. The quarterbacks that are doing well in the NFL, just go down the list and count up how many stars they had, right? Whether it's Brock Purdy as Mr. Irrelevant playing in a Super Bowl, how much starts did Brock Purdy have at Iowa State? I mean, he started since his freshman year. Jalen Daniels, another guy who started a ton. Who's passing Jalen Daniels in the Rookie of the Year votes? Bo Nix. And who's played more football than Bo Nix? So I think you want starts. Anthony Richardson didn't have starts, complete bust. Mitchell Trubisky didn't have starts, complete bust. So that's something I would be focused on if I was Nussmeier and trying to project how he can play better before he gets to the pros and come into the pros as a higher level player. He just needs more starts. I think he's got like 9, 10. That's not going to cut it. You need 20 plus starts, preferably more like 30. Cam Ward's got like 43, something like that, maybe more. I think Cam Ward's got like 46, 47. I'll look it up, but it's in the 40s. That's what you want. You need that going into the NFL, or you're putting yourself behind the 8 ball. So we'll see.
There's a comment here from Armu that I've seen this sentiment a good amount. At what point do we develop a QB and not lean on the portal for a one-and-done QB? Not knowing who our QB next year hurts recruiting. I look at the rankings, and 4 of the top 5 teams in the country have transfer quarterbacks at the helm. So I really don't subscribe to that theory. I think, again, the proof of concept in terms of what Miami has done this year with a portal QB, I think helps recruiting more than anything. Obviously, yes, you'd love to have your guy. And listen, it may still be, right? I'm not counting out Emory Williams, but I just don't subscribe to this theory.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a new era.
Your example is right on. And the 5th team, the team that doesn't have a portal quarterback in the top 5 is Penn State. And I don't think Penn State's quarterback's moving the needle in any positive way for him. It's not like no one's going to Penn State to play with Drew Aller. Plus, they don't have good receivers anyways. So I don't think. Now, listen, I will, to Armu's point, do I think the Gators have juice because of DJ Lagway? 100%. That's why they have momentum with players who want to play with him and with fans and with everything else. So, and the portal, he's going to help there too. So DJ Lagway, you got a DJ Lagway. Yes, that's good to have. But you don't know, even if you're a top 5 player, if it's going to be a DJ Lagway. And by the way, you can get guys like, not necessarily DJ Lagway, but guys like DJ Lagway in the portal. That's where Daniels changed teams. You can get guys that fade a little bit. Georgia, you've seen it do with Jaden Rashada. I think that's going to help them down the road. I'm not saying he's Lagway as a player, but I think that's going to help them down the road. Dante Moore with Oregon. You can get guys in the portal that had that kind of upside. Of course, Bo Nix is another example of somebody who ended up being a first rounder, was a highly rated guy, went down, and then went back up. There's a bunch of examples we've gone over on the podcast a bunch. So, yes, I'd love to get a DJ Lagway out of high school. Costs a lot of money. It's not guaranteed to be good. You could also be spending $2 million a year on Nico, which, look, he's got talent. You can see why they paid him. Maybe he goes on a crazy run here in the playoff and brings them a championship, and I'm eating my words. Very possible. But to this point, is $2 million on Nico helping Tennessee get to the national championship given what's around him? I'm not sure that's the case.
Yeah. Question here from Chi-Town Kane. Any D-line recruiting news?
They're pushing on Jarquez Carter. I think last I heard the momentum was good there. They got to get over the finish line. That's the big target on the defensive line. And now that you flipped Hayden Lowe, Jarquez Carter, I saw him playing tight end, catching a pass in his game last week. Stud player, great senior year. You're battling Ohio State, they're the number 2 team in the country. They're going to send up a couple of defensive tackles to the NFL. It's a tough battle, but Miami's making progress there. They got his teammate. Jarquez Carter is a premium A1 target. We got a guy here, Master, saying he'll just tune in instead of calling us. See you boys in Atlanta for Arizona State, Miami Natty, baby. Would love nothing more. Scattaboo is a sensation. My kids are pretending to be Scattaboo in the backyard. Like everything that's happening down there in Scottsdale.
Guys, go follow Master on TikTok, please. That's his new hustle right now, man.
He's the 9
he's
that he's in his 30s.
On TikTok.
He's reinventing himself. He's a young man, young master. But yeah, definitely follow him on TikTok. Follow all his work. He's the best, man. He's honorary Kane.
Brandon says he thought Master had recruiting news. So.
It wouldn't be the kind of recruiting news that involves football players. I guess knowing him, he's probably in Ibiza somewhere.
Not American football, at least.
Oh yes. So let's see here. We got a comment from Don Vaughn. DJ Bailey would be great if he jumped. He started a ton this season and has gained valuable reps. NC State's thinking. I think. So I've said this before. I think your ultimate goal is to get just a proven elite playmaker, somebody who's super productive already, and then you just plug them into your system and elevate their profile. Mateer definitely fits the bill. Bailey, I put in a box with, I've said this before, Mendoza from Cal, who just had a really good comeback win against Stanford. Very good game overall. You saw the post-game interview where he was crying and doing all that, which I thought was cool. I mean, people have different opinions on it. Then you have, it kind of reminds me of Kirk Cousins, quite frankly. So you have Mendoza, you have Bailey, and you have Emery, who's already on your team. So, and you don't know if any of these guys are going to jump in the portal. Mendoza probably least likely given his attachment to that program. But all 3 of those guys, ACC starters at some point. Emery less than the other 2, but had 2 big starts as a true freshman. The other 2 started pretty much most of their true freshman years. Good sign. Multiple years of eligibility. Both were all 3 of them, or Mendoza and Emery in the same recruiting class, right? And then Bailey a year younger. All 3 of those guys are tall, over 6'4". In Bailey's case, he's 6'6". Mendoza, I think, is closer to 6'5". Emery, 6'5", 6'4", and strong. So size-wise, all 3 of those guys are good. Intangible-wise, I give them all an A+. I think that's why they played early and were successful. The vision, the studying, the resilience, the mental leadership, all 3 of those guys have what you want IQ-wise, intangible-wise. Throwing, I think for all of them, the dynamic arm strength is the question on all 3. Can they just let it rip and make big plays with their arm? I would say all 3 have upside potential in their arm because of their size. Sometimes bigger guys like that, as they get older, the arm gets stronger and stronger. Most famous example, Tom Brady, who went from average arm to well above average arm in the NFL just because he worked on his body, worked on his fundamentals. Kind of, you see it with pitchers too. The height can project future velocity improvements. The one thing I'll say about Bailey, did I cut you off there?
No.
The one thing about Bailey that I would add to this discussion and why I think Bailey has the best talent of those 3 is he is a really, really good runner. And watching him at Chaminade, he's a guy that's been winning ever since he was in youth football. He's not a stranger to winning and being in the spotlight, even though he was a 3-star recruit. But coming out of Chaminade, I thought he'd be a capable runner. The guy that would pick up first downs with his legs. He is becoming a threat as a runner. I mean, he's not a running quarterback because he's really a pocket quarterback by nature, but he's like a running quarterback in that you can design runs for him and he can get you 40 yards, 30 yards, pick up big chunks with his legs, picks it up in a hurry, and is a very smart runner as well. He's going to get stronger. So you're going to see his running ability is going to be outstanding from what I could see. He's a big dude. He's going to get, he's skinny right now, but he's going to get stronger and in better shape, and those strides eat up grass. So I think with that, and then the arm, I think, has more in it. You see flashes. He had a big throw down the stretch to take the lead against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech ended up driving and winning, but he took the lead on the game-winning drive. You saw some nice velocity throws. I think he drives it better than like a Ja'Cory Harris, who he's been compared to. I think he's bigger and drives it better. So there might be more juice in that arm going forward. But those three are all in the same category. I'd put Matier in a different category because he's already a dominant player. Now it's just about getting him into this type of offense.
Johnny Lagoon, who hopped on here late, said, I saw a little Concepcion committed to Kansas State. Hopefully that doesn't mean Kevin, his brother, is going there.
We'll see, man. We'll see on that. Truthfully, I think if I'm designing my perfect portal receiver and we don't know who's going to jump in, I want someone who's a target monster, someone who is going to get open, catch the ball, make contested catches, and be a reliable player in that way, a reliable playmaker. You lose Restrepo, I think that's the guy that's going to be hardest to replace. Not exactly, breaking news there, but you don't have to replace his body type. It's just replacing that consistency you had with him where everybody knew it was going to Restrepo and you still can get it to Restrepo. You need a guy like that. It doesn't have to be the same size, same speed, same package as Restrepo, but a guy that brings that personality, that confidence, that proven production. That's what you need at receiver. I think Horton's going to be Horton next year. He's got a lot to him. We haven't even seen Horton's deep ball game, which he showed in camp. He can do that too. But he's been very good on slants and tough catches with his size. I expect Trader and Carr to replace George and Brown. I think that's going to be someone, I don't say an easy transition because George and Brown are good players. They're going to play pro, but I think that's a natural transition for those two. Horton's Horton. You got to replace Restrepo's production, even if it's a different spot of the field.
I think people are giving Jacoby George his flowers a bit now, but people underrate his ability to get open too, man. I mean, I think he's a dynamic route runner and he's very tough to defend one-on-one. I think we've seen, at times this year, Restrepo in man coverage, it probably isn't as efficient as he is against the zone, which makes sense. But George is a man beater.
Oh, no question.
And you need more of those guys.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't seen that deep ball to George because he's capable of that as well.
Well, the other day, almost had one the other day. It was a little bit, out of his reach. Probably could have dived at it, but maybe need a little bit more air under that.
Yeah, I think you do see similarities between JoJo Trader and George. Not identical, but you see some similarities there. And I think with Carr, with the juice he brings, you can see him replacing Brown. So I feel good about those three. You just need the star of the show, which is the hardest part, right? Replacing a receiver who's going to have 1,000 yards and be an All-America. That's the hard part. I don't think you want to push Horton into that role or push one of these young guys into that role right away. You want someone with some more veteran experience and let those guys flourish in their own roles.
Well, Carl Davis makes a good point here too. Lofton and Riley Williams can replace Restrepo up the middle. Tight end, running back usage would be key.
We got to replace Arroyo too.
Yeah.
So I do think they'll be able to replace Arroyo. And one thing, I know we're talking about next year's team, but I was actually thinking this as I drove into the studio. I was thinking about this. I'd really like to see us, and we're talking about the portal as we get into it more, but I'd like to see us get a transfer portal blocking tight end. And that's going to generate some eye rolls. McCormick's been good for us this year in his role, which we said McCormick was getting too much criticism for being forced to play a role beyond what he's supposed to be playing last year with no Riley Williams or a younger Riley Williams and no Arroyo. And no Lofton. You saw him doing more than he was supposed to be doing. This year, he's in his role and he's flourishing. He's catching touchdowns when he's uncovered. He's blocking. He's very, very reliable. He's athletic in space when he's making his blocks. So I'd love to get a guy. Georgia Tech got a blocking tight end from, I want to say, Yale, one of these Ivy League schools, who's going to the Senior Bowl potentially, just as a blocker, and he killed Miami. One of the reasons why Miami got smoked on the edges is because Georgia Tech had a tight end that they pulled from one of these Ivy Leagues that was more of a blocker but had size and played his role to perfection. I think Miami would be smart to grab a guy like that. And if you do that, you're still going to have Riley Williams being your lead tight end, but now you have the ability to play Elijah Lofton more as a tailback. And I think as more you watch Elijah Lofton, and I talked about this, we haven't seen him run the ball as the tailback for this team. You have too many. Lofton a lot of options as a runner, because if he's a single back, and the team has got light personnel trying to defend the pass, he can run on them all day, and he's 2-4 plus. If they have heavier personnel, guys that are better suited for the running game than the passing game, now you split out Elijah Lofton and go empty, and you're going to get a mismatch somewhere.
I think we just went out there for a second because of the internet. We're on now, but we're going to have to monitor that. So we're coming over an hour here. So maybe get last few questions in here. I don't want the internet to go out here in the middle of the stream. We had an issue on Friday. We had to record from my house. I wanted to get to Chi-Town Kane, asking about Kellen Wiley, which we did talk about a little bit earlier, but if you give him another update here, he just contributed. So
yeah, absolutely. Appreciates the support with Kellen Wiley. He was supposed to officially visit last weekend. Miami decided they weren't taking official visits. Malachi Tony, Micah Newton, 2 commits that were supposed to take official visits. They did not. A lot of reasons for it. All those guys are playing playoff games, so the Friday part of the visit is pretty much cooked. You have a noon game. So everything after that is Miami getting ready to play Syracuse. They're really locked in on finishing the season strong. Obvious reasons. Their goals are all in front of them. So Mauro made the decision. You're already missing half the visit. The other half, I'd rather spend that getting ready for Syracuse and being locked in and being totally focused on the game as opposed to recruiting. It's unfortunate because Kellen Wiley is a really good player, someone Miami would love to have in the class, but the timing just didn't make sense. It's easier for the other guys, Tony and Newton, because they can just visit a couple weeks down the road officially after signing day. They're already going to be coming anyways as commits, and they'll have their official visit and get all the bells and whistles after signing day, I think mid-December. With Wiley, Miami still wants him. Hopefully they get a chance to maybe bring him on campus, try to get his signature, because if he gets signed without taking an OV, which happens sometimes in this new era, Miami be very happy.
See what else we got here. Al Lewis says maybe we can move Chris Johnson to slot. I mean, look, I'd like to see him involved in the pass game as well, get him the ball. But I think, and there's some comments about Ray here as well, but you guys have to understand the slot position is such a position of craft, right? And there's such a skill set. It's not just, running fast and being quick. There's a lot that goes into it. And that's not a very easy transition. Ray was a running back in high school. I think, we've seen, obviously he's the punt returner, and they've tried early in the season, especially to get him the ball in different ways. But that transition's tougher than people realize. And that's one of the reasons Restrepo is so good at it, because he has a feel for the zone. Obviously, his hands are great. After the catch, he's amazing. But just the feel for the position and the craft, the footwork is it's a lot tougher than people realize.
Yeah, and to me, it's not replacing the position, which I agree with Pete. Everything you said is dead on. It's replacing the production. So it's not that we need to replace the slot position. We need to replace a guy that every time Cam Ward needs a first down or a touchdown, he looks to Restrepo, and he's the best player available. So you got to replace a lot production-wise with Restrepo. I think that's the bigger concern, is somebody who can just get open, command the ball, and get it, even when the other team knows that player is the guy that you're looking to. So that's what needs to get replaced. But listen, there'll be a lot of interest in the portal. I expect you do have young players, so it's not like you're just relying on a ton of receivers. You just like the right one to supplement that group. But I want to talk about supplementing your wardrobe this winter, Pete. The Miami Hurricane Team Store. This is right across the street from the university, right next to the Thesis Hotel on South Dixie Highway, MiamiHTS.com if you're not local. Harry Rothwell, you all know if you bought apparel down here in Miami, he's the guy that's been with the program for years and years and years. This is the official retail store of the program. So you're supporting the program while also getting the absolute best stuff direct from the people that are making it happen. The Miami Hurricanes Athletic Department. You got the new shoes. Pete, you got the visuals in front of you. So what are you looking at?
Got this. Got a lot of cold gear, man. It's freezing in the studio right now, which is never the case. It's not even that cold today in Miami. But if Miami takes care of business this weekend, it'll be cold in Charlotte. So obviously a big selection there. And I got an email this morning for a 30% discount coming on Black Friday as well from the Hurricane Team Store. So definitely want to check that out.
Keep you up to date on that. Black Friday, 30% off. Also, your first purchase, you're getting 20% off just by using promo code INSIGHT20. That's promo code INSIGHT20 for 20% off your first item. So a lot to talk about. We were ranting a little bit, but it's a lot of fun, man. So with recruiting, with portal, with everything kind of heating up, there's a lot to talk about. I appreciate everybody in the chat who's stuck with us, and we'll keep it rolling, man, all week. We got Mike Ryan on Wednesday. Got a lot of recruiting coming up, a lot of portal talk, and of course, we'll be breaking down the Syracuse Orangemen. Classic matchup, old Big East nostalgia, Miami and Syracuse. one win away from the ACC championship.
Remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Go Canes.
Go Canes.